tonight, fighting back, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar under attack for anti-Semitic tweets, not staying quiet. Omar, who accuses Trump of trafficking in hate, her words, his entire life, is now publicly clashing with the president's new envoy to Venezuela. Manu Raju is out front.
President Donald Trump has called on her to resign after remarks many viewed as anti-Semitic. And on Twitter, she's accused the president of racism. But on Capitol Hill, freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is in no mood to talk about any of it.
The president said that you should resign and the vice president said you should be held accountable for your views. Can you respond to that?
No, thank you.
Then asked about this Wednesday tweet where she said to Trump, "You have trafficked in hate your whole life against Jews, Muslims, indigenous, immigrants, black people, and more. I learned from people impacted by my words. When will you?" Omar took strong exception.
This morning you said the president trafficked.
What is wrong with you?
Question about your tweet. You had a tweet saying the president trafficked in hate.
Yes, I tweeted. There's a response. You can run that and have a nice day.
Why can't you explain more what you meant to say?
A Somali refugee who joined Michigan's Rashida Tlaib as the first Muslim woman to ever serve in the House, Omar has long criticized the Israeli government, but has said she respects the Jewish people. And her allies argue she's been unfairly singled out. Yet after tweeting Sunday that GOP criticism over her Israel views are, quote, all about the Benjamins, she was roundly condemned, even by her own leadership, and later apologized, saying she understands the painful history of anti-Semitic tropes.
Can you resent your comments, Congresswoman?
I'm pretty sure that was stated in my statement.
GOP leaders were not satisfied, demanding she lose committee spots, even though they have been mostly silent about Trump's inflammatory racial rhetoric. Still, Trump went even further.
I think she should resign from Congress.
The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who has been critical of Omar's words, would not say whether she should be removed from his panel.
I'm not commenting on anything.
At a hearing today on Venezuela, Omar engaged in a contentious exchange with Trump's special envoy, Elliot Abrams, who wanted a chance to respond to her criticism.
I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question. That was not a question. I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
And Aaron, I had a chance to ask the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, if she agrees with the Republicans and that Omar should be removed from committee assignments. She said no, and she said the Republicans do not have clean hands on any of this. She cited chants at President Trump's rallies where they said "USA" in front of the president's face, as she said, and they didn't apologize for the remarks. And she also said, where were they over 13 years when Steve King, the Iowa Republican congressman, had made a series of racist comments until last year they decided to pull him from his committee assignments. They said, why didn't they do that sooner? Aaron.
Thank you, Manu. Out front now, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. He sits on the Foreign Relations Committee. And I appreciate your time, Senator. Congresswoman Omar is firing back at the president today. You know, she's pointing out he's made anti-Semitic and racist comments in the past. But the question is, do two wrongs make a right?
Well, of course they don't. And Representative Omar and the president and those that surround him need to understand that trading in these kind of anti-Semitic tropes does great damage to our country and is greatly offensive to those that are supporters of the U.S.-Israel relationship and Jews here in the United States and across the world. But it's true. I mean, the president and his allies who have been, going after any Democrat linked to George Soros, it's claiming that he's trying to buy the influence of members of Congress are treading on dangerous ground as well. So, hopefully everyone can be a little bit more attuned to the words they use in this place, and we can talk a little bit more substance.
So I want to play for you an exchange today. It's from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. So on the House side of things, but obviously, a hearing important to you. Congresswoman Omar refusing to give Trump's Venezuelan envoy, Elliot Abrams, a chance to respond to her criticism. And I just wanted to play this clip for you, Senator.
In 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
On February,
that was not a question. That was I reserve the right to my time.
Senator, is that how these things are supposed to go? Is that appropriate questioning?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that. I'd have to listen to the fuller context of that exchange before I pass judgment. Obviously, lots of these hearings become fairly heated. Listen, what I think we all have to understand is that the United States needs to tread very carefully when it comes to trying to promote regime change in South America and Central America. We don't have a good history there, and there's a bad taste left over from decades of perceived American imperialism. And so I have actually written that the Trump administration needs to understand that by sending Elliot Abrams to Venezuela, who does have a history that is not looked kindly upon by many in that region, that it may send a message that is unintended. So I don't know anything more than what you played about that exchange. I just know that there's a tricky business afoot in Venezuela right now as we are trying to oust a dictator without, it seems, a real concrete plan on how to get that done.
You, Senator, you're talking about South America. You've also taken a big stand on what's going on with Saudi Arabia, and it's been 5 days since the White House refused to meet a deadline, right, to tell you all whether the White House or what happened. Whether Saudi Arabia's crown prince is personally responsible for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Obviously, the CIA and the U.S. intelligence community has concluded that the crown prince personally directed that murder. Here is Representative Michael McCaul, a top Republican on the House Foreign Affairs today.
The response that I received was completely inadequate. It was about half a page, and I think it was not in compliance with law.
Is there anything you can do, Senator, to force a response from the White House, which clearly is trying to stonewall?
Yeah, listen, the president knows that Mohammed bin Salman is responsible for the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, and he doesn't want to certify to that. Now, we don't know the reason for that. Obviously, the most disturbing reason would be that the Trump family has business interests, present business interests in Saudi Arabia that we don't know about. That's one of the reasons why we would like to see the president's tax returns. But we don't have to wait for his certification to take action. We have a piece of legislation in the Senate, a bipartisan piece of legislation, the Yemen Accountability Act, which would set sanctions against those that ordered the Khashoggi murder and reset our relationship with Saudi Arabia, because the murder of Khashoggi is not the only bad thing that they are doing, the Yemen civil war at the top of that list. So, we can't go over there and hold his hand while he writes the certification to us, but we can take our own action.
Before we go, I want to ask you about the breaking news, and that, of course, is Paul Manafort, the judge ruling that he intentionally lied to the FBI, to the special counsel, to the grand jury. This obviously was President Trump's campaign chairman. How big of a threat could this be for the president? Now, the judge's ruling that he intentionally lied after agreeing to cooperate.
Right. And I guess the question is, why was he lying? What was he trying to protect? And were there others that were cooperating with the government that were lying as well? And that's why many of us are really eager to see a report from the special investigator. I have been amongst those who have said that while I don't want Mueller to shut down his investigation, he's locking people up and he should continue to lock bad guys up. At some point, he's got to show Congress his cards. And this new finding that Manafort was lying intentionally to him raises more questions about what they were all trying to hide. So I'd like to see some report from the special investigator as soon as possible so we can take action on it if it's necessary.
All right. Senator Murphy, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Aaron.
And next.